So I'm learning the technology right now. It's another Shabbos for us that we are apart. And we shouldn't get used to it. We should be an oddity, and we should be back together in a shul setting very, very soon. We just began the month of Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan was yesterday. Today is the second day of the month of Nisan. The very word Nisan means nes, a miracle. Nisan means nisei nisim, a miracle of miracles. So they should be open, they should be revealed miracles. We should all experience them. We should see them in a very revealed manner. Literally, that any moment now we should hear that a cure has been found, that people are getting healthier, that people are protected, that there should be some type of open and revealed miracles for all the world to see, and it should happen immediately, very, very soon. Tomorrow, we read the first portion of the book of Vayikra. In Greek and in Latin, it's called Leviticus, the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus, the word Leviticus means the book of the Levites. That name makes sense for the book because the entire book is about the services that were offered in the Mishkan and the tabernacle, and then later in the Holy Temple. And it's all about the offerings of the tribe of Levi. The Kohens and the Levites were all from the tribe of Levi. So it's a book of the Levites. But in Hebrew, we don't call it Leviticus. We call it Vayikra. What does Vayikra mean? And he called. It's the very first word of the book. But why would you call the entire book, and specifically this week's portion, by the word and he called, where the word and he called doesn't have anything really to do with the entire book? The Latin word of Leviticus makes a little more sense than Vayikra for the entire book. That's one question. The second question is, if you actually look in all the printed versions of the book of Vayikra and in the Torah scroll itself, the aleph of the word Vayikra, which is the last letter of that word, is written in very small. It's not the same size font as the rest of the word. So why is that aleph made small in every published print of the book, and in fact in every Torah scroll found throughout the world? Who called in the word Vayikra? Vayikra Moshe, he called Moshe. Vayadaber Hashem Elav, and God spoke to him. So God is calling Moshe by his name, Moshe. And the commentaries, in fact, say that every time God spoke to Moshe, he called him first. Not on his cell phone. He didn't send him a text, but he actually called out his name, Vayikra Moshe. He called out, Moshe, Moshe. And that each time Moshe's response was the same response he had by the burning bush, the response of, Hineni, here I am, I'm ready. Whatever the task may be, God, I'm ready. When it came to Moshe transcribing the Torah, God is dictating the Torah to him and telling him each and every single word to put into the Torah. He gets to this word, the opening of this week's portion, the opening of the book, as we call it, Leviticus, the book of Vayikra, and God dictates him and says, say, Vayikra el Moshe, that I called out to you, Moshe. Moses says, I can't write that. It's disrespectful that the almighty, infinite God had to call me. It doesn't feel right to me. I'm just a puny little human being. You're an infinite creator. You called me. It's pasnished. It doesn't feel right. And God says, I want you to write it that way. And so when Moshe writes it, he doesn't write the full word Vayikra. He writes Vayaker. He encountered, as if it was an act. We happened to bump into each other. And God says, no, put the aleph there. Vayikra, I called out to you. So when he wrote the aleph, he made it very, very small. That's the humility of Moshe. So why is the book called by this word? For us to always remember that all the offerings that we will talk about in the book of Vayikra, it's not because God is hungry. It's not because he needed a piece of meat. No, it's because God is calling your name. because God wants to get close to you, because he wants a relationship with you. And he calls out to you by name. The question is, are you listening? Do you hear him calling your name? Do we hear his calling? Sometimes he just knows how to get our attention. It's fair to say that he has our attention now. And we need to answer, Hineni, here I am. Even amidst the crisis, even amidst the difficulties, Hineni, I hear my name being called. I'm here. I'm ready. I want to share a story with you that was shared by Rav Mendel Futafas, one of the famed Hasidim who spent a great deal of time in a Soviet labor camp for the crime of spreading Judaism. Well, in the labor camp, there were many prisoners from all different walks of life. And there was one fellow there, an elderly man. He was an old Cossack. And he had this loyalty to the Tsar. And because he had still this loyalty to the Tsar way after the Tsar, the communists saw him as a threat. And they imprisoned him in the same Soviet camp that Rav Mendel Futafas was there. And the two would often talk. The two would often chat with one another. And there was one late night they were having this talk. And the old Cossack was reminiscing about life, the old days. And he opened his heart a little bit. And he began to speak with much emotion. It wasn't about his wife, and it wasn't about his children, and it wasn't about his grandchildren. He missed his horse. He was talking about his horse and how much he loved his horse. He says, a Cossack's horse was no ordinary horse. A regular horse would cost 5 rubles. A Cossack's horse could cost 500-600 rubles. A Cossack's horse, he said, was very different. It had a different heart. It was made up of something very different. It would do anything for its master. It would jump into fire. It would jump into battle. It was stronger. It was braver. It was faster than anything alive. So how did we catch it? How did we find the Cossack's horse? He said they would go deep into the forest and they would find a herd of wild horses and they would chase them at times for days and days until they chased them into a river with a very strong current. And the horses would have to swim across the river if they wanted to survive, for the fellows that were chasing them were shooting. It was creating a lot of noise. The horses were frightened and they would run right into the river to escape the danger. But the river that they would run into had a very strong current, and it was a wide river, and therefore they needed to get from one side to the next. The fellow tells Rav Mendel there were different types of horses. There were those that were old, or perhaps very young, or not in the best of shape, and not in the best of health. And they would try swimming across the current, against the current, but the river again was wide and the current was very strong and they couldn't make it. And they were treading water. They were struggling to survive. But then there were the other horses. Other horses, they were stronger. And although it was difficult, and although it was challenging, and although it was frightening, they made it across. And at the first moment that they made it across on land, they galloped away into freedom. They survived. But, said the Cossack, there was a third horse that was different than the first two, very different. The third horse would make it to the other side. And when it came out of the water, it stopped and it turned around and it saw the old, frail, and young horses drowning in the river. And without any hesitation, it turned around and went right back into the brutal waters to rescue the struggling horses. And we had men waiting on the other side. He said, and when these horses, these third horses would emerge, they would spray some paint on them. They would mark them. This is a Kazakh's horse. And we would chase these horses for days and days and days until we would capture them. And then we would train them. For we knew that these were the horses we can trust with our very lives. I think of the story when I think of the past 2 weeks. We all responded differently. We respond differently. There are seniors, there are people that are weak, there are people that are ill, there are people that have medical conditions, there are poor people, there are homeless people, there are hungry people that are broken, that are scared, that are afraid. When they get caught in the current and they try to swim, but they can't make it across. They're being told stay in the homes, they can't go out shopping. The crisis could be one of life and death for them. There were those that didn't have work before and therefore have no savings whatsoever, and they don't have the funds for food. There are people that this crisis is so real. It is taking up every moment of their day and it's filling them with anxiety. There are people that are ill. There are people in ICUs. The ICUs are out of beds. There's a shortage of ventilators. There are many that are sinking in the river. But then there's the other type, the one that is strong. He's in a crisis. He's panicking, but he has the means to make it. He has the strength to make it. And so he makes his calculations. This could last for months. So I need 196 rolls of toilet paper, and I have to make sure I have them. And I need 48 chickens. And I need X amount of gallons of milk. I need enough spaghetti that if I were to connect one piece to the next, it would go from here to the moon. I need to survive. They call all their charities and they say, sorry, no charity during a time of crisis. We have to cut you off. They call their day schools and they say, make sure you don't deposit the check for March or April or May because I don't know if my children are going to school. These are tough times. They call their synagogues or their temples and they say, cancel the memberships or put their memberships on hold or put my pledges on hold. Don't count on me for the year 2020 because it's going to be a difficult year.
The rabbi.
We need to survive at all costs.
Rabbi, can you please
And they'll
mute
make it to
everyone?
the other side. They'll make it to the other side.
I turned
of the
it
river.
off.
That's human instinct. We need to survive.
Okay, it said mic off.
But then there's the third horse.
Deleted, yeah.
The horse that's facing the same crisis, the same turmoil, the same losses, the same
Right now,
struggles.
all I
But
don't
this
even,
one
because I did
turns
that, I don't see
around
him
to
talking
see
at all. But it
who
said it
is
was off.
struggling
I'll be
even
very
more.
quiet, sorry.
Who needs help even more than
What to
I do? Who has nothing and no one to lean on?
All right. Okay, go
I
ahead.
can't describe to you in your words what it felt like this week and last week to get call after call from so many of you. And one after the next in different ways. One was saying, you're going to get so many calls from people in need. I want you to know you can count on me. You're probably afraid, Rabbi, of what's going to be for the year 2020. So I want to call you and I want to put down my pledge for the coming year. And I'm not going to go down. In fact, I'm going to go just a little bit higher. Put me down for $1 more because I know what it must be like. The calls from people when we put out the call for to help to shop for senior citizens. And literally within an hour, we had 40 volunteers lined up who we turn to day in and day out. This senior needs help. This senior needs the medication picked up. And you made the call. The Kazakh's horse. Hineni, here I am. People need food for Pesach and they don't have a credit card. They don't have a line of credit. They don't have savings for a rainy day. They don't have investments that they know will come back one day. Who's going to feed them? The Kazakh's horse turns around and says, Hineni, I have to be there. I'm so proud to be the rabbi of this community that called and reached out in so many different ways over the last 2 weeks. Hineni. God is calling our name, Vayikra. He's calling out to us in a time of crisis, in a time of need. You know, a crisis like this comes once in a lifetime, if even that. Now, and we will get through this. Whether it'll take a day, as we say, we look forward to miracles, or a week, or a month, or 3 months, I don't know. But I do know we will get through it. And think ahead with me. You know life eventually will be restored. The freeways will be bumper to bumper, and we'll be kvetching about it again. You will be working late hours at the office, and you will be complaining about it. The stock market will come roaring back. We'll go back to cursing out the Astros. We've forgotten about them for a while, but don't worry, we will remember what they did to the Yankees and to the Dodgers. We will kvetch about carpools. Toilet paper will once again be used to TP houses. Hand sanitizers will once again be those bottles near the sinks that only our mom tells us to use. But I think we'll all be different. It'll never be the same again. We will have learned life's lessons. We will have appreciation for the things that we took for granted. But we will also look back and we will reflect how we reacted under crisis. Our children are watching us. Our grandchildren are watching us. We had always asked people that lived through World War II, what was it like? We've asked Holocaust survivors to tell their stories, what was it like? Our children and our grandchildren will remember this crisis, and they will tell their children about it, and they will want to know, and how was Bubby and Zadie during that period of time? How did they react? Let them see that we were a Cossack's horse, that we turned around, that we lifted up those that needed it most, that we didn't run from God, but we ran towards him. We didn't stop going to classes, but we increased in our Torah study. We didn't stop praying, we prayed even more. We didn't stop giving charity, we increased it. We didn't stop keeping Shabbat, we embraced it even more. We didn't pass over Passover, we made it even more special. The women of our community just in the last week recited the entire book of Tehillim 10 times. 150 Psalms times 10, that's 1,500 Psalms, which is said just by a small WhatsApp group of women. We intensified our prayer. I know from the people watching right now, one of you who texted me and told me that for the first time in many, many years that you've struggled with Shabbat, and for the first time you've managed to keep the complete and full Shabbat. And how proud it made me. We didn't run away from the faith, we embraced the faith. Or the woman that's watching now that emailed me telling me, I lit the Shabbat candles and I have to admit it was the first time in 2 decades that I have done so. We have embraced the faith. We have I heard the Vayikra. We've heard the calling. God's calling our name and we are responding. Hineni, Hineni. Here I am. I am ready. I mentioned that it's the month of Nisan. The month of Nisan is the month of Geula. It's the month of redemption. It is in this month that the Jewish people were taken out of Egypt, and it says, just like we were taken out of Egypt, the first exile in the month of Nisan, we will be taken out of the final exile in the month of Nisan. The coming of Mashiach will take place in the month of Nisan, in the month of redemption. So may it indeed be that this is the final challenge. This is the last challenge. This is the historic challenge where God is taking us out of our synagogues and putting every single one of us home in his final moments of exile. He's bringing us home, and by Yikra, he's calling our names in our own homes, and he's calling out to us, and he's asking us this final challenge. Can you go through a world crisis? Can you go through a crisis of every human being on the face of the earth? And instead of hiding, turn around, look for those in need, and be there for them. Instead of running away from religion and spirituality, can you embrace it in a time like this? And perhaps, just perhaps, and let us hope indeed that this is correct, that with each of us doing our own, each of us doing our mitzvah, each of us responding to the Vayikra, to God calling our name with the Hineni, with here I am, that indeed we will merit to hear the shofar sounds of Elijah's shofar, blowing and letting us know indeed that the days of Moshiach are here, that the redemption is here. Not only will the coronavirus be wiped off the face of the earth, but all viruses and all illnesses and all war and all pain and all suffering and all anxieties will once and for all be wiped from the earth. And what we will have is a world of peace and a world of love and a world of compassion and a world of chesed, a world of kindness and a world of spirituality. We will all return to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, our eternal capital, with the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. May it happen speedily in our days. May it happen in the month of Nisan. May it happen before Pesach, so we don't have to worry of what's it going to be like to have a Seder all alone. No, we will have the Korban Pesach. We will have the Paschal Lamb. Those of you that like lamb chops, hopefully, will have some lamb chops this year, Pesach. But we will merit to see indeed the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Please make it a very special Shabbos in your own homes. Make sure to light the Shabbat candles, make the Kiddush, cut the challah, talk words of Torah, words of this week's particular portion. We're going to come back together after Shabbos at 8:15. We're going to have a special Zoom Havdalah with Rabbi Label Kahanov. We've sent out the links for that so that we can all join together for Havdalah at 8:15. During the week, as you've seen, if you're checking out the emails and the WhatsApp texts and all different new means of communication that I have learned over the last few days, there are classes, there will be lectures. There's a lecture Monday evening at 7 p.m. as well on the subject of faith and suffering. Where is God when it hurts? You'll tune in. It'll be both on YouTube Live and on, I think, Zoom. I don't even know anymore, one of them channels, but you'll get information on the email. I'm going to ask if you'd like to turn your volume on. You can wish each one a good Shabbos for the next 60 seconds so that everyone can wish one another a good Shabbos. I look forward to seeing you all on Zoom and on YouTube and other means, but very soon, hopefully, when this crisis will be over, we'll see each other in person and we'll celebrate together. A good
Amen.
Shabbos.
Amen. Good
Amen.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, Rabbi.
Good Shabbos,
Thank
everyone.
Good Shabbos.
You.
Shabbat shalom.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos, Daniel.
Good Shabbos.
Everybody, nice to see you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
For those who
Thank
want
you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Hallelujah.
It says high self view.